far out in the ocean, where the water is as blue as the loveliest cornflower and as clear as the purest glass, it is very, very deep. So deep indeed that no human being could ever reach the bottom. Down there, in the depths, lived the Sea King Triton and his subjects. King Triton was a widower, and his mother, the Sea Queen, kept house for him. She was a very wise woman, but she was proud of her high birth, and so she wore 12 oysters on her tail. King Triton had 6 beautiful daughters, and they all lived together in the great underwater palace. Each daughter was more lovely than the last, but the youngest was the most beautiful of them all. Her skin was as clear and delicate as a rose petal, and her eyes were as blue as the deepest sea. But like her sisters, she had no feet. Her body ended in a graceful fishtail. The youngest princess, Ariel, was quiet and thoughtful. While her sisters loved to explore their underwater world, she was always curious about the world above the sea. Whenever they told her about the ships sailing above, the lands with mountains, forests, and flowers, her heart longed to see them for herself. In their palace, there was a beautiful garden filled with red and blue flowers, with trees whose branches were heavy with bright fruit. Ariel often sat there, gazing up through the deep blue water, daydreaming about the world she could not see. "You must wait until you are 15, the Sea Queen would say. "Only then may you rise to the surface and see the world of humans." Ariel longed for that day to come, more than anything else in her life. She would listen eagerly whenever her older sisters returned from their visits to the surface, describing the wonderful things they had seen. When the eldest sister turned 15, she was the first to go above the water. She came back full of stories about a city by the sea, with lights twinkling like stars, and the sounds of music and laughter. The second sister went the next year and spoke of the soft hills and forests she had seen, and a beautiful castle. Year after year passed, and with each sister's journey, Ariel's longing grew stronger. Finally, when her 15th birthday came, she rose from the depths and floated toward the surface. As Ariel broke through the surface of the water, she saw the vast sky above her, glowing with a soft pink and gold from the setting sun. The clouds were tinted with shades of violet and red. It was more beautiful than anything she had imagined. Looking around, she saw a large ship anchored nearby. The sails were furled, and the crew was busy on deck. Music and laughter floated through the air. Gliding closer, Ariel peered through the windows of the grand ship and saw a group of people dancing. One person caught her eye. He was a young prince, with handsome features and a kind smile. He seemed full of joy, celebrating his birthday with his friends. Ariel could not take her eyes off the prince. She watched him for hours, enchanted by his grace and beauty, until the night grew dark and the sky was lit by twinkling stars. Suddenly the sea began to churn, and dark clouds gathered overhead. The waves grew taller, crashing against the ship. A fierce storm had blown in, and the ship was tossed violently by the wind and waves. The crew rushed to secure the ship, but the force of the storm was too great. With a loud crack, the ship's mast broke, and the vessel began to sink. Ariel watched in horror as the ship's passengers were thrown into the raging sea. Among them was the young Prince Eric. He struggled to stay afloat, but the storm was too strong. Without thinking, Ariel dove under the water, swimming swiftly through the stormy waves. She reached Prince Eric just as he was about to sink beneath the surface. Grabbing hold of him, she swam back up, keeping his head above the water. For hours, she carried him through the dark, stormy sea, until finally, the storm passed and the sun began to rise. They drifted toward the shore of a small island, where Ariel gently laid the unconscious prince on the soft sand. She sat beside him, gazing at his peaceful face. Before long, she heard voices. It was a group of young women from a nearby temple. Ariel knew she could not stay. Humans would not understand her, and she did not want them to see her fishtail. With a heavy heart, She swam back into the sea, hiding behind a rock, but keeping her eyes on the prince. The temple women found Prince Eric and brought him back to the temple. Slowly, he awoke, but he had no memory of Ariel. He thought the women had saved him, and he thanked them warmly. Ariel watched from a distance, feeling a deep sadness in her heart. She loved the prince, but she knew she could not be part of his world. Ariel returned to her father's palace deep beneath the sea. She could not forget the prince, and her longing for the world above only grew stronger. Day after day, she would swim up to the surface and watch from afar as Prince Eric went about his life in the human world, unaware of her love for him. One day, she gathered the courage to speak to her grandmother, a wise old mermaid who knew much about the world of humans. "Grandmother," Ariel said, "I love a human prince. Is there any way I can become human and live with him?" Her grandmother shook her head sadly. "It is impossible, child. We mermaids live far longer than humans, but we do not have eternal souls. When we die, we become sea foam and vanish. Humans, on the other hand, have souls that live on after death, and they rise to a beautiful kingdom in the skies. The only way you could live among humans is if one of them were to love you so deeply that he would marry you. His love would give you part of his soul, and then you could share in the human afterlife. But that is rare and dangerous. If you cannot win his love, you will die and become foam on the sea." Ariel's heart ached at the thought, but her love for Prince Eric was stronger than her fear. Desperate to find a way to be with him, she swam to the farthest reaches of the ocean, where Ursula the sea witch lived. Ursula the sea witch was a fearsome creature, with a garden of strange plants and creatures that writhed and squirmed in the darkness. She knew Ariel was coming and greeted her with a wicked smile. "I know what you seek," Ursula the sea witch said. "You want to become human and win the heart of your prince. I can grant your wish, but it will come at a terrible price." "I am willing to do anything," Ariel replied, her voice trembling. "Ursula." The sea witch raised an eyebrow. "Very well. I will give you a potion that will turn you into a human. You will have legs, but every step you take will feel like walking on sharp knives, and your feet will bleed. Still, you will move gracefully, and no one will see your pain. However, if Prince Eric does not love you and marry you, you will die and become sea foam the morning after he marries another." Ariel's heart raced, but she nodded. "I accept." "Ursula." The sea witch's smile grew darker. "And the payment for this magic is your voice. You must give it to me. Once you become human, you will never be able to speak or sing again. Not a word." Ariel hesitated, for her voice was the most beautiful in the sea, but her love for Prince Eric was greater. "I agree," she whispered. Ursula the sea witch laughed and handed her a small bottle filled with a glowing liquid. "Drink this when you reach the shore, and you will become human. But remember, if you fail to win the prince's love, you will perish." With trembling hands, Ariel took the bottle and swam back to the surface. She reached the shore near the prince's palace and drank the potion. Pain shot through her body, as if 1,000 sharp knives were cutting through her, and she fell unconscious. When she awoke, the sun was shining and she was lying on the beach. Her beautiful tail was gone, replaced by 2 human legs. Prince Eric found her soon after, and though she could not speak, he was struck by her beauty and grace. He took her to the palace, where she was treated with kindness, but without her voice, she could not tell him who she was or how she had saved his life. Ariel lived in the prince's palace, and though she could not speak, her grace and beauty captured the attention of everyone around her. She followed Prince Eric wherever he went, and he grew fond of her, treating her like a dear friend. Yet, despite her love for him, Prince Eric did not know that she was the one who had saved his life during the storm. Every step Ariel took was filled with pain, just as Ursula the Sea Witch had warned. It felt like walking on sharp knives, but she endured it, hoping that Prince Eric would come to love her deeply enough to make her his bride. Only then could she gain a soul and live with him in the human world. Time passed, and though Prince Eric enjoyed her company, he spoke often of a mysterious girl who had saved him. "I will never forget her," he would say. "She was from a temple, and I owe her my life. I feel that she is the one I must marry." Ariel's heart sank every time he spoke of this girl. She knew that Prince Eric believed it was the temple women who had rescued him, and she had no voice to tell him the truth. One day, news arrived that the prince's parents had arranged for him to marry a princess from a neighboring kingdom. The prince, not knowing what else to do, agreed to meet her. He told Ariel that, although he was bound by duty to meet this princess, his heart still belonged to the mysterious girl who had saved him. Ariel followed Prince Eric as he sailed to meet the princess. When they arrived at the foreign kingdom, the royal family greeted them with great splendor. To Ariel's shock, the princess turned out to be the very girl from the temple, the one whom Prince Eric believed had rescued him. Overjoyed, Prince Eric declared, "It was you. You are the one who saved my life. Now all my doubts are gone, and I will marry you." Ariel watched, her heart breaking as the prince's joy grew. Though she had sacrificed everything for him, her voice, her family, her life beneath the sea, he was now in love with another. Prince Eric and the princess were soon to be married, and Ariel knew her fate. Once they exchanged vows, she would die and turn into sea foam at dawn. On the eve of the wedding, Ariel stood on the deck of the prince's ship, gazing at the sea. Her sisters appeared, rising from the water. Their beautiful hair, once long and flowing, had been cut off. "Sister," they called to her, holding out a sharp knife. "We have given our hair to Ursula the Sea Witch in exchange for this. If you kill Prince Eric with this knife before dawn, you will save yourself. You will turn back into a mermaid, and you can return to the sea, to your family. But if you do not, you will die when the sun rises." Ariel took the knife and looked at the prince, sleeping peacefully in his bed. His bride slept beside him, their hands intertwined. She stood over him, the knife trembling in her hand. She loved him more than anything, but could she take his life to save her own? As the first light of dawn appeared on the horizon, Ariel made her decision. She kissed Prince Eric gently on the forehead, then threw the knife into the sea. She could not harm him. With a heavy heart, she stepped to the edge of the ship and threw herself into the water. Her body began to dissolve into sea foam, just as Ursula the Sea Witch had promised. But instead of disappearing completely, she felt herself rising into the air. She had become one of the daughters of the air, spirits who, through their good deeds, could one day earn a soul and rise to heaven. The daughters of the air told her that because of her selflessness and pure heart, she would now have the chance to earn a soul over the coming years. With joy and peace in her heart, Ariel rose into the sky, her love for Prince Eric still strong, but no longer bound by pain or longing.